On a cold November night in 1971, a man boarded a commercial flight in the Pacific Northwest, hijacked it, collected a fortune in cash, and then stepped off the back of the plane into the dark. He was never identified, he was never caught, and the money was never found. November 24th, 1971. Thanksgiving Eve. Northwest Orient Flight 305 is sitting on the tarmac at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The 36 passengers who were supposed to be on this plane to Mexico City have just been released. They were told there was a mechanical issue. There was no mechanical issue. Somewhere inside that 727, a man in a dark suit is sitting with a bag containing $200,000 in $20 bills. He has 4 parachutes, and he has already told the crew exactly what happens next. The Boeing 727 had a feature that almost no other commercial aircraft possessed: an aft staircase, a set of stairs at the rear of the plane that could be deployed and used in flight. The FAA didn't even know this was possible until D.B. Cooper did it. At approximately 8:13 in the evening, the crew felt a brief change in cabin pressure and a slight upward movement in the tail section. The aft staircase had been deployed. By the time anyone could react, the man was gone. The FBI launched the largest manhunt in Pacific Northwest history. Soldiers, aircraft, search dogs, ground teams, 18 days of searching. They found nothing, not a parachute, not a footprint, not a dollar bill. The man who called himself Dan Cooper had stepped off a moving aircraft at 10,000 feet into freezing rain over some of the most impenetrable forest in America, and simply ceased to exist. It is the only unsolved airplane hijacking in the history of American commercial aviation. If America's unexplained mysteries keep you up at night, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Mestiunix USA so you never miss what we uncover next. Hit the like button if this story is already getting to you. Now, let's go back to the beginning. In 1971, buying an airline ticket required no identification, no photo ID, no security screening. You walked to the counter, paid cash, gave any name you liked, and boarded the plane. On the afternoon of November 24th, a man approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter at Portland International Airport. He paid cash. He wrote the name Dan Cooper on the ticket. He bought a one-way flight to Seattle, 30 minutes north. He was calm. He was unremarkable. Nobody looked twice. Cooper took his seat at the rear of the aircraft. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette. He appeared to everyone around him to be a businessman on an ordinary commute. Shortly after takeoff, he passed a note to Florence Schaffner, a 23-year-old flight attendant. She assumed it was a phone number and dropped it in her purse without reading it. He leaned over and told her she should read it. It said, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit next to me." When Schaffner complied, Cooper opened the briefcase just enough for her to see what was inside. 8 red cylinders, 4 stacked on 4, connected by wires with red insulation, and a large battery. He closed it. He told her his demands calmly, as if reading from a list. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve. A fuel truck standing by in Seattle. He was not aggressive. He was not threatening. He was entirely in control. The pilot, Captain William Scott, contacted Seattle Air Traffic Control. The FBI was notified. Northwest Orient's president authorized payment immediately. The FBI gathered $200,000 from several Seattle banks. The serial numbers of all 10,000 bills were photographed on microfilm before the money was packed. Passengers were told there was a minor mechanical difficulty. Nobody panicked. The plane circled Puget Sound for roughly 2 hours while the cash and the parachutes were assembled. At 5:39 in the afternoon, the plane touched down in Seattle. Cooper inspected the money. He inspected the parachutes. He accepted the equipment, including, unknown to him, one reserve parachute that had been sewn shut for training purposes and could not be opened. Then he allowed all 36 passengers to leave. He kept 4 crew members. He had what he came for. Cooper's next instructions were precise. The crew would fly southeast toward Mexico City, with a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. Maximum altitude, 10,000 feet. Flaps at 15 degrees, landing gear deployed. These conditions would slow the aircraft dramatically. The pilot warned him it would burn fuel dangerously fast. Cooper acknowledged this. He didn't care. He ordered flight attendant Tina Mucklow to go to the cockpit and close the curtain behind her. As she walked forward and turned to draw the curtain, Mucklow saw Cooper for the last time. He had tied the money bag around his waist. At 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the forested wilderness of southwestern Washington, the crew felt the tail section move and the cabin pressure shift. The aft stairs had gone down. There were 3 Air Force jets following at a distance. None of them saw him jump. The plane landed in Reno at 10:15 p.m. The aft stairs were still extended. Cooper was gone. By midnight, the FBI had launched what it would later describe as one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in its history. Codename NORJAK, for Northwest Hijacking. And more than 300 soldiers, search aircraft, and dogs combed the wilderness for 18 days. In 5 years, agents investigated over 800 suspects. They eliminated all but 2 dozen. The man who called himself Dan Cooper had left behind 3 things: a clip-on tie, a tie tack, and a few cigarette butts. No fingerprints, no confirmed identity, no trace. Cooper left his clip-on tie on the seat when he jumped. It is the most significant physical object in the entire case. In the early 2000s, independent researchers used scanning electron microscopy to examine microscopic particles embedded in the tie's fabric. The tie contained over 100,000 microscopic particles, including rare unalloyed titanium, bismuth, and strontium sulfide. These materials pointed to someone who worked in aerospace, specialty metals, or advanced electronics manufacturing. For 9 years, nothing surfaced. Then, on February 10, 1980, 8-year-old Brian Ingram was on a family camping trip on Tina Bar, a stretch of beach on the Washington side of the Columbia River near Vancouver. He was smoothing out sand to build a fire pit when his hand struck something. 3 bundles of $20 bills, deteriorating, still bound with rubber bands. The FBI confirmed the serial numbers. It was Cooper's money, 290 bills, a total of $5,800. Of the original $200,000, that was all that was ever found. The discovery raised as many questions as it answered. Tina Bar was more than 20 miles from the area where the FBI believed Cooper had landed. The bills were bundled in the same arrangement as when they were handed over, suggesting they had stayed together in the bag for some time. Diatom analysis conducted in 2020 showed the bills entered the water in spring, months after the hijacking, not on the night itself. How the money got to Tina Barr has never been satisfactorily explained. Over the decades, investigators focused on dozens of suspects. One kept coming back. Richard Floyd McCoy, Jr. was 27 years old in 1971. A Vietnam veteran, a decorated helicopter pilot, and an experienced parachutist with hundreds of jumps on his record. On April 7, 1972, just 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy hijacked a United Airlines flight out of Denver. He demanded $500,000 and 4 parachutes. He parachuted from the plane over Utah. He was caught 2 days later, convicted, and sentenced to 45 years. He escaped from a maximum security prison in 1974 and was killed in a shootout with FBI agents. The FBI initially eliminated McCoy as a suspect because he didn't match the physical description. Cooper appeared to be in his mid-40s. McCoy was 27, but McCoy had served with special forces. He knew how to change his appearance. He knew how a 727 worked. The two hijackings were so similar in method, same plane type, same exit point, same parachute and ransom format, that many investigators found it impossible to believe they were unrelated. In 2023, the case cracked open again. McCoy's children, Shantae and Rick, who had waited until their mother's death in 2020 before coming forward, contacted aviation investigator Dan Grider. In a storage building on the family's North Carolina property, they had found a modified military parachute rig and harness. Grider examined it and described it as literally 1 in a billion. The modifications matched in specific detail the parachute prepared by the skydiving equipment provider who supplied the 4 chutes given to Cooper in 1971. In September 2023, Grider and Rick McCoy met with FBI agents in Richmond, Virginia. The agents took the parachute, the harness, and McCoy's skydiving logbook into evidence. The FBI searched the family's North Carolina property. They requested DNA samples from McCoy's children. They discussed the possibility of exhuming McCoy's body. As of late 2025, the FBI has not publicly confirmed or denied that the investigation is active. No official conclusion has been announced. Independent researchers continued working the tie. In 2024, investigators Eric Eulis and scientist Tom Kay announced they had used metagenomic DNA analysis on a sealed filter containing particles from Cooper's clip-on tie, and claimed to have isolated DNA belonging to Cooper with, as they put it, 100% certainty. They have urged the FBI to compare this DNA against potential suspects, including McCoy's family. The FBI has not publicly responded to this request. The tie is still in FBI custody. The DNA, if verified, could break the case after 53 years. Among the other serious suspects, Dwayne Weber, who allegedly confessed to his wife on his deathbed that he was D.B. Cooper. His wife, Jo, said he once stopped a car on a Columbia River bridge near where the money was later found, got out with something from the trunk, and returned without it. He was eliminated by DNA testing. Kenny Christiansen, a former Northwest Orient employee with skydiving experience, was proposed by his brother. He died of cancer in 1994. Robert Rackstraw, an ex-soldier with a long criminal record, was investigated extensively between 2016 and 2018 before being dismissed. The money question has never been resolved. Of $200,000, only $5,800 was ever recovered. Deteriorated or disorganized and found in the wrong place. No Cooper bill has ever surfaced in circulation. No bank ever reported one. Either the money was destroyed in the wilderness, swept away by a river, buried somewhere unreachable, or someone held onto every single bill knowing the serial numbers were recorded and never spent a dollar of it. Each possibility is extraordinary. None of them brings us closer to an answer. The hijacking changed American aviation permanently. In the year that followed, there were at least 15 copycat hijackings, men who tried to replicate what Cooper had done. None succeeded. In response, the FAA required all Boeing 727s to be fitted with a device that prevents the aft stairs from being deployed in flight. It became known as the Cooper Vane. Metal detectors were installed in airports. Baggage inspection became mandatory. The single act of one unidentified man reshaped the entire security infrastructure of American commercial aviation. Cooper became something unusual in American crime history, a folk hero. He robbed a corporation. He harmed no one. He outsmarted the government. He escaped. For many Americans in 1971, at the tail end of Vietnam, in the middle of Watergate, in an era of deep institutional distrust, there was something almost satisfying about that. An annual convention dedicated to the case still meets in the Pacific Northwest every November. More money was spent on the investigation than Cooper ever stole. Who was he? That is still the question. The FBI's official position since closing the active case in 2016 is that the evidence is insufficient to name anyone definitively. The most compelling current theory points to Richard Floyd McCoy, Jr., but McCoy is dead, and the FBI has not confirmed his identity. The DNA on the tie has not been publicly matched. The parachute from North Carolina has not been publicly connected to the 1971 hijacking. The case remains officially unsolved, the only unsolved airplane hijacking in American history. Somewhere in this forest, or along this river, or in a box in someone's house, the answers might still exist. A parachute, more money, a piece of identification, something. The terrain has been searched repeatedly. The river has been studied. The money has been analyzed. And still the case sits open without a name, without a conclusion, without a body. If Cooper survived the jump, he lived out his life somewhere in America, watching the news, reading the books about himself, knowing that every face in every suspect sketch was wrong. November 24th, 1971. A man in a dark suit paid $20 for a one-way ticket. He gave a false name. He hijacked a plane, collected a fortune, and jumped into the dark. His tie is still in an FBI evidence box. His DNA may be in a forensic filter. His parachute may be in a North Carolina storage shed. But his name, his real name, has never been spoken aloud in a courtroom. He remains Dan Cooper. He remains D.B. Cooper. He remains nobody. And after more than 50 years, that is exactly what he wanted. This mystery is still open. And at Mystianix USA, we keep looking. If this story got under your skin, subscribe, like, and drop your theory in the comments. Who do you think D.B. Cooper really was? We'll see you in the next mystery.